Hey, good morning, church. So grateful to come and spend a few moments with you talking about 2 Samuel chapter 9. I want to encourage you as you read this chapter to remember that this is where we get to see David really acting out that moniker that has been given to him by God himself. David's a man after God's own heart. One of the ways that we see how he is a man after God's own heart is his compassion and his desire, his intentionality in giving honor to those whom honor is due. Saul made some really terrible choices, turned away from God, and it cost him dearly. It cost him everything. Jonathan also made some bad decisions, choosing a king who was making the wrong choices and turning away from the anointed king who was seeking God's will for his life. Mephibosheth, on the other hand, Jonathan's son, Saul's grandson, hadn't even had the chance to make bad choices. He had all this stuff stripped from him before he even really had a chance to make any choices for himself. And perhaps the most tragic of all of them, being lame, being handicapped for nearly his entire life because of an accident. In this culture, to be handicapped is a horrible thing. It's not easy in any culture or context. I don't want to make light of it. But in this culture, for a man to have a handicap makes him pretty much worthless in the eyes of his neighbors. Mephibosheth spent his life feeling worthless. David finds him, gets a hold of him, restores Saul's property to him, puts him in a place of honor, tells him he can eat at his table for the rest of his life. What an awesome tribute to who Christ really is and what great things God has done and how he impacted the life of David and the heart of David, that David would go to such lengths to love the grandson of his former enemy. You know, it's amazing when we think about how this lesson could change things in our world around us today. I would encourage you as you read this lesson to go out and think about who you could love on today. Maybe it's of somebody who's familiar to you, somebody that you've been friends or family with for years, but God just placed them on your heart and you want to reach out to him and encourage him, show compassion to him. Maybe it's somebody who's a stranger to you, but God put them in your sphere of influence and now you have an opportunity to really be that person who's after God's own heart. I pray you'll be encouraged as you read this chapter today and be reminded that God, of all the things he could have hung his hat on creation, on his power, he could have writ his name across the sky. He could have writ our names across the sky. He hangs his hat on love. He hangs his hat on the greatest act of love the world has ever known, on the act of sending a son to die in our place so that we might be saved. He rose again, conquering sin and death, so that we might have hope. It's amazing what he has done for us. I pray you be blessed as you read this chapter today and be reminded of the call that we have to love God with all of our heart, mind, strength, and soul, and to love our neighbors, not just as ourselves, but as Jesus says in John 13:34, as I have loved you. I pray you be blessed and enjoy your time in 2 Samuel chapter 9.